The first position that I had working for a group that was buying notes, one of the hats that I wore was to go through the purchase agreements with the attorney, and so he would redline or mark up an agreement, and then we turn that document, and then the counterparty that we were working with, their attorney would do the same, and so I got to understand what the reps and warrants cure periods and breaches and all of the different clauses and a lot of the purchase and sale agreements or mortgage loan sale agreements. There's a million different terms for it. Asset purchase agreement. They're all the same thing. It's the definitive agreement or contract for the sale. And a lot of them have the same kind of structure. You've got, definitions and the preamble, and then you've got your reps and warrants, and maybe you have an interim servicing agreement in there, and then your signature pages, of course, and some exhibits and then your forms. So that was very helpful for me to understand what's involved there. And there's two things. You touched on the cost. So being cognizant of the cost associated in a transaction because of the legal aspects, but there's also the time, right? So if you understand that turning a document and maybe it's going to sit on an attorney's desk and then he's going to get it back to maybe a principal or officer of the company, there's just multiple people. And what I learned in doing this in kind of that relay process was managing expectations and the timeline in a transaction, knowing why a transaction wouldn't be able to close by a certain amount of time, and not over promising to say, okay, we could do this by month end or quarter end or year end. That's a big deal, because what I think that has done is it's built credibility. It's helped with reputation. So if we say we're going to do something, we've thought through it a few steps ahead and thought, okay, the attorney might be sitting on that for 5 days. He might have issues with this. It might take some time to work through that. So all of those things are parts of a successful transaction. And I think that if you can relay that up front, if we could have a similar conversation to what we're talking about right now, and somebody says, okay, how quickly could you close? And I mention these things, they realize I've done this before. They realize that there's some thoughtfulness and there's an understanding that, hey, there's a deadline and it means something. And if we're going to meet that deadline, these are the things that need to happen. And we need to talk about it up front. So that's a big part, I think, to successful transactions.